Live with Coffee Talk, Santi. Hope you got your cup of Joe because boy, do we have an interesting match to talk about.
Yeah, yeah. Well, scoreless draw, but yeah, we're here to talk about it.
One thing we don't have to worry about is taking up time talking about each goal, which makes I don't know. I was worried this would make for kind of a boring show because we don't have exciting things like that to talk about, but this is one of those where everybody's going to have their own take. And so as we go through our goal flow or game flow rather, as we go through our game flow and just the overall way that this game played out, the connections, the stats, everybody has their own take because nothing finished. Like there wasn't any final result. So who does the blame fall on? What you can talk about the positives on the defense, but I have a feeling that not just in the chat on our live stream, but throughout the week, we're going to see. And boy, you probably want to stay off the Facebook groups this week.
Oh my God, yeah, I saw some stuff last night. I was like, wow, this is bad.
You saw some stuff last night already. I did not go on Facebook before I called it a night. I didn't want to wake that beast.
Right. Yeah, I just looked at a couple of things like, oh, I'm just gonna get off. Like, not
Probably
worth it.
probably for the best, right?
Yeah.
All right. Oh. Were you surprised that Klaus had the most shots for our team, given everything that all the conversation around it right now?
No, no. I wasn't. But man, he just couldn't get. Not. I don't know if it's bad luck or just a
Yeah,
bad bounce, but it's bad that he
it's
couldn't get
bad.
one in.
It's bad. All right, let's get going for our Fallout recording, shall we?
Let's do it.
Welcome in everyone to Flyover Footy. My name is Matt Baker, joined as always by my friend in soccer, Santiago Beltran, and we're here to recap everything that happened and didn't happen in the 0-0 draw between St. Louis City and the Houston Dynamo. Santi, how are you doing on this day after we're recording?
Doing great, Matt. It was yeah, scoreless draw, but good times at 9 Mile Garden. I called the game from there, and good turnout after the rain. But yeah, just ready to talk about this scoreless affair.
Talk about 9 Mile Garden for a second, though, because I think it was the first time this year that all the supporter groups had gotten together to have that kind of a watch party. And you broadcast live for the radio portion, right? For the Spanish broadcast. So, how was that, your experience and what you saw at 9 Mile Garden?
Yeah, no, it was a great turnout. Obviously, like 2 hours before, it wasn't looking good. It was raining. Everybody was like under the stage trying to find to stay away from the rain. But then it cleared up, and people are starting to show up, and it was great to call the game from there. Just it was it was awesome to see a supporter march for an away game at a watch party, something I had
Yeah.
never seen. So that was great to see, and yeah, just everybody having a good time, chanting, and it was great. And just calling the game from there, just seeing people's reactions, and I don't know, it was different, but to me, it was a great experience. I hope we can do that more often.
That's awesome. I think that's an incredible atmosphere vibe, and to have you live there doing the broadcast, that's something special. And I agree. Hope we see more of that. But
Too
I
bad
hope
I couldn't call a goal, but
Yeah, that's what I was getting ready to say. I wish the next time you do that, you get to have a live goal call because
yeah,
I can only imagine the audio's on probably for the game, but you've got behind wherever people are watching and just this random exclamation of a Santiago Beltran goal call ringing
right.
through the 9 Mile Garden area. I mean, I feel everybody was robbed of that in this Houston
Yeah, yeah. Next time.
next time. But let's start off like we usually do on the game recap and analysis by talking about the starting 11. Same starting 11 as we had the past two games, which means this is the first time St. Louis ran the same lineup in three straight games in their history, which is notable that Bradley Carnell was willing to do this on the jump on the other side of the bye week. This was something we debated a little bit on our end on the back line because Kyle Hiebert, Joakim Nilsson, it's the question of who's going to be ready to go. Is Joakim Nilsson able to finally make that jump to start, play at least 45 minutes? Plus, Chris Durkin. We didn't know if he was going to be able to go. He was a game time decision, questionable because of a knee contusion that he suffered against City 2 in the scrimmage last week. But as luck would have it, we ran out the same starting 11. Roman Berkey in net, Anthony Markanic, Kyle Hiebert, Tim Parker, Thomas Totland on the back line, Chris Durkin, Tomas Ostrak made up the midfield, Celio Pompeu, Indiana Vasilev, Rasmus Alm were our attacking mids, and Klaus was up top. What did you make of this starting 11? Not seeing Nilsson in there. Durkin was able to go. We're still relying on the same attacking four that we had success with before the bye. It was trending in a positive direction, and we hoped to see that carry through. So all these pieces put together back there on the field again for the third straight time. What did you make of it?
Yeah, I was satisfied with seeing the same lineup. To me, it's like if things are working, why make a change? And this lineup got results the last couple of games. Nilsson, I was on our DMs, I told you I was 50-50 just because I was like, Kyle Hiebert has been doing things well. The team has gotten the results. So why change the defense if the team got results? But at the same time, I was like, at some point, if he's fully healthy, he has to start playing. So when is that going to be? So that's why I was 50-50. In the end, it was Hiebert instead of Nilsson. But glad Nilsson made an appearance towards the end. So maybe next game he will start.
It's tough to gauge, right? Because with the defenders, you don't want to sub them in too early because in a Bradley Carnell system, he subs his attackers regularly. It's rotating these attackers. That's where a lot of the subs come from. And so you're not looking to have Joakim Nilsson be a typical ramp up player like we saw for Rasmus Alm, for instance, where you're not going to have Joakim Nilsson come in. And we're seeing this now where he came in for a little bit. He showed up for, I think, 15 or 20 minutes a few games ago. But he's not progressing to get 45 and then start. That's not how the defensive line progression substitutions work. So now we are really in this nebulous area of when is it? And it could be any given game because at this point, knowing that we're not getting that progression, you could say, I hope Nilsson to be ready to go next week. I kind of would have hoped that he would have been ready to go this weekend. In the end, it didn't really make that marginal of a difference because we still had a clean sheet, right? So backline, as we're going to get into, you can't fault them for too many things. It's just one of those, we want our optimal starting 11, our optimal backline, and that without a doubt consists of Joakim Nilsson. So it's going to be something to watch for, but I don't expect for us to hear too much from Bradley Carnell other than he's progressing well, he's in contention. The typical things that he likes to say when people are progressing, keeping those close to the chest. But I think in training, the thing for me to watch for is, will Joakim Nilsson lose that neutral penny that he wears in training? Will he lose that designation? Will he start to train more on the sides and outside like every other defender and attacker? And will he be as integrated fully as a guy like Tim Parker?
Yeah, and maybe when that happens, that's when that would be a good sign that he will start. But as you're saying, I think it's any game now he will start, and maybe with this next stretch of games, 8 games, 3 games in 8 days, I think we'll probably see him start in one of those.
So we've got a lot to get into, looking at the passing networks, looking into our overall passes, how our defensive shape looked against Houston, and what the flow was, including some stats. But without goals, our typical show typically looks at going into the goals in detail, how they occurred, and how they played in the flow of everything else. So before we look at the passing networks and everything, I had a few moments that I thought were notable as we went through this game. And I thought that overall, we did have a few nice chances. And I think they started for me around, I would say, the 19-minute mark when Celio Pompeu forced himself a high turnover on the left side. And this was a moment that in a lot of games, I go back to Austin from last year, the very first game, where we force a high turnover like that. There's some space to work. We have at least one other trailer that we can help with. And it just fizzled out. And it fizzled out quickly. There really didn't seem like there was anything notable that occurred. And it almost seemed like Klaus forced it after Celio passed it over. So Celio, unlike what Sam would do in that scenario, because Sam, I think, when if he were to force a high turnover, he would go direct to goal himself.
Yeah.
That's what Sam Adeniran does. What he's done in the past. But Celio on the left side looked to play make a little bit more. His first instinct wasn't necessarily go direct to goal. It was force the high turnover and create a chance. And this was a microcosm of a larger issue because the chance was created for Klaus. And it looked to me like Klaus tried to force it a little bit, going to goal when the best angle wasn't necessarily there. This, for me at least, Santi, was the beginning of the storyline where Klaus just couldn't find the necessary final touch that he needed, right?
Yeah, and I think Celio hesitated for a second because when I saw it, I was like, oh, he's gonna shoot, and no, then he passed it to Klaus, and I think the pass wasn't also like the best pass, so then Klaus has had to
Manage it a
force
little more.
something. He got a shot, but it just wasn't. He just wasn't in the best position to shoot after that pass. But yeah, it wasn't. That play is just like just shows what's going on and some of the issues that are happening. But I was very happy with the way the team was pressing and getting the ball on Houston's half on the first half. But it was like, oh, they got it, but nothing was happening. The chance creation wasn't there.
And that was the story, not just of the first half, but of the entire game. And on the Houston side, it didn't really seem like they were pressing us or pressuring us too much. They had a consistent 70-ish% possession throughout the first half, and most of the game. It ended where St. Louis only had 33% possession in the entire game. But especially at the beginning, where they were having 70, we saw the stat on the screen, 70% possession through 25, 30 minutes, but they weren't doing anything threatening. And I was enjoying seeing the St. Louis defense work what they needed to do. The spacing was well. Thomas Totland was inside the defensive box quite a bit, making sure that our line was strong and we weren't leaving gaps in their possession-oriented offense. That was good. Thomas Totland himself actually had some good two-way moments. He had a nice moment in the first half that I thought I enjoyed seeing him go a little direct to goal. I think it was in the 35th minute or so, where he had the ball, he was progressing in a counterattack, and rather than do what Celio did earlier and try to play make and move the ball inside or try to find space, he just went direct to goal. And he was using, I think, the confidence that he had gained up against SKC, knowing that he not only has the capability to finish there, but he has, I think, the trust of his staff and of the players that if you have and feel like you have an open shot, if you feel like you have a moment, take it. You have that ability, and we want you to go for it when you can. So seeing Totland do that, even though the story of everything we're talking about, nothing came to fruition, that was one of those moments where I really liked to see him take that chance, whether it was inside or outside the box, knowing the capability that he has. Thomas Totland, while nobody had a markedly great game, was one of the players that consistently has had good games, and I still liked what I saw from him last night.
Yeah, he had another good game. He didn't play 90 minutes yesterday, but yeah, I like when he takes those chances, and he has the confidence that he has scored, and just found Steve Clark in a good position to make a save. But that was a really good play, great pass from Klaus from left to right to find Totland, but too bad he couldn't finish it.
The rest of the first half ended similarly. You had Celio Pompeu. I like this moment at 38 where it was very reminiscent of the goal that he scored against SKC, where he stepped over to his right. He had the confidence to do that. This was a moment where he, unlike that first opportunity around 19 minutes where he turned the ball over and he tried to play make, this was a chance where he received a pass and he tried to do it himself. And that angle seems to be something that he's really enjoyed and tries to take advantage of, where he's stepping over the ball. He lure the defenders in, and then he makes a move to his right to clear up a little bit of space. And it just wasn't able to come to fruition on that. This is the thing that Celio Pompeu brings to the team, where he's working on that left wing. And that's where, for me, his bread and butter is. He's dangerous both ways. He can create chances. He's willing to take the opportunity when he sees it present itself. And that's one of the reasons I think we were a little miffed to see him being subbed out at halftime, because of this moment close to half, around 38 minutes, where he still had a good shot. So he was still playing well. And it didn't seem like there was any injury concern. So seeing Celio play so well and then seeing him sub out at half, not where it was a halftime where I think we were lucky to get into half escaping with a goalless draw after that
Yeah.
crossbar shot by Houston right before half. But overall, this half was a similar St. Louis half where we're creating some chances. We are disappointed in our level of finishing, but nothing overall is nothing is too terrible, right? You don't want to change up too much because our defensive shape is working. We need to have more on the ball action. So you look for what is Carnell tactically going to change, but instead we had a halftime substitution. What'd you make of the halftime substitution or any other things going into half that you saw?
Yeah, I was surprised that Celio was subbed out so early, and yeah, I was like, maybe he's injured, he has a knock. Carnell clarified after the game that
Mhm.
he was okay, that it was just a tactical decision, and it was I was surprised when AC came in. I was like, okay, so is he gonna go middle, and then maybe we're gonna see Indy on the left, but he played on the left for the most part, and he did okay. But I was surprised to see him there because I don't recall seeing him there ever or in a long time. But yeah, I think it was a good substitution to give a spark to the offense. And surprised too because we usually don't substitute that early. That was a
Mhm.
surprise too. So that's why I was thinking, oh, maybe there is an injury or something else. But I think it was more to give Houston a different look.
Yeah, and Bradley Carnell post game, when asked on Salio, he seemed almost a little confused or miffed by the fact that that was a question, as in like that never entered my thought. So why would you ask me on that? But his exact quote is, "Salio is fine. It's okay. We have a group of hungry guys who want minutes." And Carnell goes on to mention that they will look to gain advantages and attacking threats, managing everyone's minutes as well as a reason for the sub. So this is a case of a couple things here for me. Not only getting a different look by sending in AZ, and you trust AZ's form and fitness is good enough, and you want to get him more minutes as well. So you're managing Salio's minutes, a player who it wasn't a regular starter last year. And so for
Hmm.
him to jump in this year and get regular starter 80, 90 minutes per game, every game, that's a lot to ask in a leap for Salio. And now you have Salio locked into this long-term contract. And I'm not saying that that played into it, but now you think, okay, he's yours and you want to develop him appropriately. You want to make sure you're not burning out his legs. And so this is a one moment that we may see other opportunities, whether it's Salio just not starting, subbing out early. You're managing those minutes in the larger context. So that's one thing. But also, you are right. I don't think we've seen AZ in this exact role as the left mid in a 4-2-3-1 formation. So I was curious, are we going to change up our shape? Because we have seen AZ on that left side as a second 10 with Indiana Vasilev underneath two strikers. But with that look, it gives you a little more freedom to go into the mid, freedom to maneuver around the field, as opposed to being asked to play more strictly on the left side in this 4-2-3-1. And the way that our shape looked after half, it was more that like for like sub. And it continued, in fact, even after Sam Adeniran subbed in for Rasmus Alm, as far as AZ is concerned, though. Because when Sam subbed in for Rasmus Alm at 64 minutes, Klaus moved underneath. Sam took that holding line striker position, the number 9, and Klaus played what we had been seeing Klaus play earlier this year with Sam, not alongside him, but rather underneath, and AZ stayed on the left. That's what surprised me the most, is seeing Indiana Vasilev stay on the right, AZ Jackson stay on the left, and Klaus be underneath, as opposed to that 4-4-2. What did you think when you saw Sam come in for Alm? Were you surprised to see Alm go out that early, and did you like the look that Sam gave us?
Well, it was. I was happy to see Sam back just because what has been going on recently,
Mm-hmm.
and finally he was in the game day lineup, and just being in Houston, his hometown, getting a chance to play there. I was happy to see him, and I like the way the team set up after he came in. Uh, when Klaus is obviously Klaus. Can have different roles, but when you have two strikers and he's behind the other striker and can hold the ball and create a space, I like that look. But not a lot of things happen for the time that Sam was there. Were like a couple of half chances, but
Mhm.
it's something I would like to see more. Now that Sam is back, maybe things are better. Whatever happened, maybe things will over time get better, and he will get more minutes. But yeah, I would like to see that look with Sam at top and Klaus behind him. That's something I would like to see more for sure.
With AZ Jackson, one thing that can't go unsaid is as soon as he entered the game, I think he had a really a good a few opportunities, especially playing alongside Klaus. I've noticed that Klaus seemed to have more shots, more opportunities in the second half than he did in the first, and I wonder if that difference in sub made a difference there. So seeing Klaus in that underneath role gave him a little bit more opportunity, not just with the positioning, but the players working alongside of him. And so you look at where is Klaus best suited in this offense right now, and we're doing this after the game where we get 0 goals. Against SKC, just the last game, we had a very different conversation, feeling Klaus is in his form, he's doing well. So this is the ebbs and flows that we have. We're trying to look at this in isolation, but also the bigger context of everything. So trending Klaus, not just saying, okay, did Klaus have one bad game? And when I asked Bradley Carnell after the game about Klaus, he had kind of that same thing to say going on, talking about how he felt Klaus's performance at times is a thankless job. Said they had good second ball moments, a ball that was skied high by Klaus, and that was probably the biggest opportunity in the second half, where that ball was sent high by Klaus with a lot of open space. I think that might have been his highest XG opportunity from Klaus. But Bradley Carnell said he thought Klaus handled himself well with what Houston gave them, despite not finishing. And so it really doesn't seem like, even regardless of what you're looking to the coach speak being, that anything markedly is going to change with Klaus. I'm not expecting big seismic shifts because shots were made, chances created, this opportunity was there. If that ball goes in, we have a different conversation. So it's not as much the formation, the way the ball was progressed. It really is purely the finishing. And Roman Berkey even spoke to that post game. So not getting too ahead of us here, but I really want to spend a few minutes talking about Roman Berkey, because I think the game ended what it was. We had a couple other subs. Kajima came in for Ostrak at 74. Joachim Nilsson and Nukvi Thorson came in for Thomas Totland and Klaus at 82, all trying to get more goal-oriented play. You're doing well defensively. You're managing Houston's low block, their possession-based offense. And so you're bringing in fresh legs in Kajima. You're getting Nilsson minutes. You're bringing in fresh attacker in Nukvi Thorson for Klaus. And this is what it was. You're trying different things in the attack. You're bringing fresh legs to outrun, get in behind Houston. Roman Berkey at the end of the game had one permeating comment to everything he was saying, and that is, we have to score. And his frustration almost seems like it's starting to boil over in how effective the back line is and how ineffective the attack is in multiple games. So yes, you can look to having 3 clean sheets in 4 games as great. You can look to the back line as being led by Roman Berkey and Tim Parker and being successful in what they're doing. Chris Durkin running the gauntlet in the midfield, and our defense doing what they need to do. But even when I asked Roman Berkey, because I tried my best to throw him a softball at the very end. I got one last question, and I wanted to hear what Roman Berkey thought about the back line, because the entire time he was talking, it was, what did you think about the attack? How can we get back on track? What do we need to do to score goals? And when I asked him how he felt about the backline performance in 3 clean sheets in 4 games, he did have some good things to say, but it was we knew exactly what we were going to do. We knew what Houston was going to do. We knew what we needed to do, and we did it. Putting a man in front of the final pass, letting them shoot from distance, things he mentioned as things they knew they needed to do on the back line and how they were effective. But he ended his final statement of the night is, quote, "What definitely could have helped us was a goal." So even in the context of how great his backline was, and talk about the performance you had that you could really control as a goalkeeper, he still is frustrated as the leader of this team in what his club is not doing to help them out on the defensive side, and what he knows that they need to do to win games, and what he knows that his team is capable of in the attack. And he went so far as to say in training, his backline plays angry. When his backline and the defense allow a goal in training, they're pissed. They're upset. They don't I mean, this is training as if you're in the game. And for his backline to be angry and upset, and for him to not see that in the attack, saying, "Oh, we scored, we didn't score, this is a something that we'll just get next time." He seems like he's really getting to a point where he wants to see seismic changes in how the attack approaches training on the offensive side, and what they do when they don't score, and how they need to take that drive and determination and anger. He used the word, they need to play angry in training, because how you train is how you play in the game. And that's ultimately what Roman Berkey seemed like he was getting at.
He is so honest when he speaks, even if he has to talk about the offense, which is the other side that he's not involved with. But yeah, he's a great leader, and I think this will resonate within the team, and hopefully the goals will start coming, and the team will do things to correct course here, and maybe start getting 3 points, and finishing some of those chances that the team is creating. But I like that him as a leader, as the captain, he speaks about that, and I'm sure behind closed doors he will have those conversations with his teammates too. But yeah, I like he doesn't hide
Mhm.
what's wrong with the team and what the team could be doing better. And yeah, the backline is doing great now. What is needed is for the offense to start finishing some of those chances it is creating. And because yeah, you have some of these performances, the team scores 3 goals, but now a scoreless draw, and this is the second in 4 games where the team doesn't score. And yeah, it didn't lose, but at the same time you have to start getting three points. And I'm gonna talk about this when we probably towards the end. But if you compare to last season, the team is not doing bad. Yeah, it doesn't have as many points, but I think it's still there and still in playoff positions. And like the table is so congested that
Mhm.
if you get a couple of wins in a row, you can get up there to fourth, fifth position. So there is time. It's a long season, but I like that Roman Berkey is so honest with his comments, and as a leader, he will be leading the efforts and the conversations to change the course.
A stat that I really don't expect or even necessarily like Roman Berkey to be in the conversation of? It's XT from passes, expected threats. So this is how threatening does your pass make the opportunity that you have when it's received. And these are things like we usually see leaders like our fullbacks, our attacking mids, even Klaus. Klaus usually leads these pretty well. Indiana Vassilev has led this stat here in the recent past in a few games, but it's how well does your pass end up creating a chance for where it results. So if you're Klaus and you're holding the line, the ball is being passed to you, often you're passing it off to a Saley or an Indy. And when you pass the ball to them, how good is their chance and how threatening is their chance? Roman Berkey was sixth of all St. Louis City players in XT. His passes had the sixth most threatening chance for St. Louis City. And this is a stat that you do not want your goalkeeper to necessarily be in the conversation of overall. Now, AZ Jackson led the team by far. He had over 0.3 cumulative expected threats. And this was indicative of AZ coming in and performing well in the second half. Yeah. You had Anthony Marcanic, Thomas Totland, Rasmus Alm, and Celio Pompeo behind them. So I think a lot of our best chances did come from that left side, where he had both AZ and Celio as two of our top five. Disappointing numbers from Indiana Vassilev, disappointing numbers from Klaus, and non-existent numbers essentially from Sam Adeniran. Now, you can this is again one game that you're looking at, so I don't want to trend too much into this, especially from Indy and Klaus on their XT, because they were so high performers in the previous few games. So what their passes were doing were so successful. It's just in this instance against this team that had more of a low block, more stayed deeper in their own end, they weren't able to find space to get off some of these better passes. And then that's reflected in our passing network, I think, too. And the big difference that I saw in this network is if you compare it to previous games, we were wider and more compact when it comes to our back line and our front line connecting. And I credit players like Tomas Ostrak and Chris Durkin for connecting those lines very well as our fullbacks for playing these little triangles on our wings between our center backs and our midfielders, and then progressing up to our attackers. But in this particular game, it's quite noticeable to me that our team is stretched. They're still as wide as they usually are. You have Anthony Markanic and Thomas Totland's average position at midfield significantly higher than Tim Parker and Kyle Hebert, pretty much in line with Tomas Ostrak and Chris Durkin, making like a 2-4 type formation often when they're in the attack. But Celio Pompeu was so high up compared to everybody else. He was doing so much, staying so high on that line that I think at times there was some difficulty in connecting Markanic and Pompeu. And you were having the ball flow from Celio to Klaus, but you didn't have a whole lot of fullback connection in those areas. And in Indiana Vassilev didn't really seem like he was able to connect well with Celio Pompeu. And so when you're having your line stretched that far, that seemed to be like, if you're trying to figure out one overarching thing on why this might not have worked well, you always take what Houston and what every team is going to give you. But when you're stretching out your lines so much like this, you're not leveraging the bit of possession that we've seen this team be successful at in the past few games. It really is more of a spray and play type situation, sending the ball long, hoping that they can grab the ball and connect one extra pass, or force a turnover and connect one extra pass. And none of that was working.
Yeah, Celio was so high, and yeah, something I didn't see much yesterday was the team relying less on long passes. Yesterday was more about the long passes. Previous games we have seen better connections and the team working with the ball better. Even though possession numbers still don't show that, the team has improved a lot this year in terms of working with the ball and created chances through different touches instead of relying on the long ball. But yesterday, and maybe it was because of what Houston was showing, we were relying more on that long ball and trying to find Celio on that left side. So it was different than what we had seen previous games. The team has still found a way to create some chances, but as we have been saying, the finishing is just not there at the moment.
The number of passes that St. Louis City had into their final third is a pretty good number for this, and it looks to how many times we put the ball into our final third, into the penalty box, and where did it come from when we were doing this. Roman Berkey in particular had 7 passes into the final third. St. Louis City as a team only had 31 passes into the final third. So you look at the fact that we only had 33% possession. We only had 31 passes into the final third. We had 15 passes into the opposition penalty box, not carrying the ball in, how many times we passed to get the ball into the final third, into the penalty box. It matched Houston's in passes into the opposition penalty box, but Houston far outpassed us into the final third. And when you have high possession, that makes sense when that tracks, right? You have more possession, more passes into the final third, but it's where they're coming from that I think I have the biggest question. St. Louis in their low possession was almost required to send the ball long because they either weren't willing to possess the ball against the type of defense that Houston was throwing at them, or they weren't able to navigate between those lines too well. Those are the two biggest things that I think were in their minds, and that led to Roman Berkey having 7 passes into the final third. It led to about 19 passes that came into the final third, well over half coming from near midfield or deeper. These aren't measures for success against a team that is low blocking you, and you're not going to create those chances unless you can draw the defense towards you. So for a team like St. Louis, who's not built or really willing to play out of the back, you're engaging your teams more in the midfield areas, and that's where you're building from. You're not going to draw them in and have a play like Sporting KC had against St. Louis last 2 weeks ago, where you're drawing the defense to the midfield, and then you have a player like Eric Tommy who can just sprint between the lines, and that's when you send it long. You target your long passes to those opportunities where you're trying to intentionally make a run. And we thought Houston would be doing that a little bit more in this game than I think they were as well, with Ibrahim Aliyu, who had tied for the second most offside calls in all of MLS. We thought he was going to be a line breaker who ran behind our lines, and we had more of those opportunities. I don't think we saw a whole lot of that because of the way that Tim Parker and Kyle Hebert were holding their line and what they were inviting Houston to do, which is just straight up possess the ball. They weren't given those opportunities for those long passes. I look at this St. Louis team as against Houston, they fell back too much into what their bread and butter is without changing it up in the slightest, looking to possess the ball through Chris Durkin or Tomas Ostrak, because Chris Durkin only had 31 touches total in this game. It was, I think, mid-teens of everybody combined, and it was, I want to say, sixth most on St. Louis's team behind Anthony Markanic, Roman Berkey, Kyle Hebert, Thomas Totland, and Klaus. And you see these fullbacks, which is obvious. You see Berkey up there with the second
Right.
most touches and tied for the first most touches of anyone on the team. That's not great in how much he's having to work with the ball being passed back and then and shot saving. But when you're having your midfield possess the ball and touch the ball so little, that hinders you, right? When you're trying to have the kind of progression that we've enjoyed the past few games.
Yeah, definitely. When your top four in touches are your backline and your goalkeeper, you can see that there wasn't enough playing in the midfield, and Thomas Ostrak, when he had the ball, he did a great job. I really like what he did yesterday, but I just don't think the ball went through him enough, and it's just the way that the team was playing, going more long instead of playing through the middle. But again, I think a lot of it is the way Houston played and the way they played defensively. They are a difficult team to break down. They had only allowed 10 goals during the season, which up to yesterday was second lowest in the league.
Impressive, and it's not outside of what St. Louis knew. Like, they knew this Houston team. Roman Berkey said it, then we mentioned it, that they knew the type of play that they were going to have, and I don't think they surprised us when Houston has 67% possession throughout the entire game. They don't have a whole lot of expected goals on the Houston side, which tracks for the style of play, but also holding St. Louis to just over one expected goals in the entire game. The volume of shots that St. Louis had were low percentage almost throughout. Looking at the number of shots, Houston dominated the shots 22-18 with 7-3 on target. They led in the inside and outside the box shots, and they kept it consistent. Houston led 11-9 number of shots in both halves, with 3-2 on target and 4-1 on target in the first and second halves, respectively. St. Louis, if it is any indication, in the second half had 3 shots of 0.1 XG or higher, and only 1 shot on target there in the second half. This number tracks from what we had talked about earlier, with AZ being a little bit of a spark in what he was creating, difference maker from Salio in what Houston was giving us. Individually, I don't take away too much with this. Obviously, I'm not disappointed with Salio. It's just what Houston was willing to give us and what a guy like AZ could offer as a change of pace and what he liked to do on the ball. And ultimately, that's what you want Carnell to be doing. It's with these tactical substitutions. If you see something not working in the first half, change it up, offer a different look, put a different guy in there and see what chaos he can create. And AZ created a pretty good amount of chaos, like our expected threat stat showed. He led the team pretty significantly in there. And so looking at what Houston gave us, what we took in the second half, I was a little bit, as the game flow progressed, especially watching it live, I was a little more pleased in the second half in what St. Louis was able to do, but it just was it purely the low block, lack of space that Houston offered, or was there some big takeaway in what St. Louis can work on with this type of a team similar to the Houston Dynamo?
Well, I think part of the issue is that you are missing some guys too. So you are working with the best lineup that you have at the moment. But yeah, I think you start to see how important Edward Leuven is and the different look he can give to the team. But yeah, the team did the best it could yesterday with the formation it could put together and with what Houston was giving. Just As I mentioned, as I said, Houston is difficult team to break down, very good defense, and there were some chances, but it's just that when you get those chances and you don't finish them, the outcome is that that game where you don't score. And yeah, team didn't score, but it still got a point, which to me it's positive. Just thinking about what's coming. Now you get a couple of home games, and if you think about it, if you compare the team this season to last season through 10 games,
Hmm.
last season St. Louis had 19 points through 10 games. This season 13. Then the 11th game, St. Louis lost to Chicago, so still at 19 points. So if you win this next game against Chicago, you will be at 16 points through 11 games compared to 19 points through 11 games. So very similar. So to me, it's still nothing to worry about. Once hopefully the next home game against Chicago, the team gets the 3 points, and hey, like everybody is like the table is so congested. Like everybody is like 14, 15, 16 points. There is still time to make it up, but I know people are worried that the team is not scoring and not getting 3 points, but just if you look the two seasons through 10 games, is not that far.
And this was about the time last year where we saw a rough stretch the St. Louis had. So we had the fantastic start, and then we had a little bit of a rough stretch in April going into May where we lost to Minnesota, we lost to Seattle, we had that draw against Colorado where we lost Klaus, and then we lost against Portland. We had one win in May in MLS play or one win in April in MLS play last year, and then we lost to the Chicago Fire to start May. So the teams go through these kind of stretches, but St. Louis is weathering this stretch. It's a prolonged stretch, so don't get me wrong. I'm disappointed in what our attack was and our inability to take some of these draws and turn them into wins when they should be. But if you're grinding out these points, especially away, you know there are a lot of positives that you have to take away, not just from the goalkeeping, but the defensive performances. And what you need to do is eventually turn the corner. And we can't keep saying the same thing over and over because you're right. If we do take 3 points from the Chicago Fire next week, then we start to have the glass half full becomes higher and higher. It becomes more full. But if we can't take 3 points against the Chicago Fire next week, a team that is almost the bottom barrel of the East and who's struggling mightily on their own end in City Park, then Houston, we have a problem. And it
Yes.
it it has to start with the attack. And you can't say yet overall that the problem is specifically with Klaus. You can't rely on Klaus as your only goal scorer. So yes, he has his own problems in finishing right now. We need to see strings of games put together where Klaus can finish in open play because as your striker, he's going to be given that opportunity. But he can't be the only player who takes these opportunities. Good teams have multiple goal scorers. Celio Pompeu still is tied for goal scoring in our team with 3. So he's right there with these chances taken. It's not just Klaus who didn't finish; it's everybody who didn't finish, and so that has to be worked on going forward. And if you feel confident in the number of chances that you're creating, which I think even Roman Berkey is fairly happy with the number of chances creating. He's not happy with the amount of finishing going on, and that is very clear. But if you're happy with the chances being created, then the conversation shifts. It's not we need to bring in a different guy because the formation's not working. We need to bring in Sam because Klaus can't finish. Because if you bring in Sam instead of Klaus, your entire offense changes. Sam is not the same player as Klaus, and so you have to look at the downstream effects of what you're going to do if you decide to pull that trigger, make that switch. You can't run the same 4-2-3-1 with the same exact mindset as Klaus is when you bring in Sam. That was pretty apparent in the second half when Sam was brought in for Alm and you played Klaus underneath and you looked at what everyone was doing to try and create for Sam. Because they didn't create that much, it didn't seem like they were trying to do too many changes underneath. I think you have to have a completely different attacking system, an attacking look rather, if you're going to bring in Sam to make him the most effective that he can be. You create specifically to deliver the ball through balls for Sam. That's point A for me is the way that you deliver service to Sam is vastly different than Klaus. Sam's not
Yeah.
going to play the ball the way Klaus does. And so you're not going to get service from your striker in that way. And that's not a bad thing. It's just, it is what it is. So in the conversation this week of what do we do about Klauss, it's a bigger conversation if you're willing to entertain giving Sam a start and significantly more minutes than Klauss. It's what do you do with everybody under him, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's one of those things. 2 weeks ago, we were happy that hey, Klaus is back.
Yeah.
Two games in a row scoring. Anything that was going on early in the season is gone, and it's just sometimes like a bye week is great, time to regroup, time to get some of the injured guys recover. But I just think about, oh, maybe it wasn't as good for Klaus because he
Yeah.
had found his rhythm, and he was in a good streak. But yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about I wouldn't worry about it just after one game. Just let's see what happens the next game. But yeah, at the same time, it's good that Sam is now with the team. He got some minutes. As you said, there are two different players. He gives the team a different look, and maybe in the next few games he will integrate more. Yeah, it's a different system. Even if you have both of them start, it's a different look. But yeah, it's just another option, and you cannot rely on Klaus for every game. So seems Sam Adeniran back with the team is good, and I hope he gets more minutes and the team figures out a way to use him. It doesn't necessarily have to be starting, but yeah, just figure out a way to use both of them as attacking threats.
100% agree. With a player of Sam's caliber, you can't not play him. Everything that's going on with the team is what it is. Think hopefully we're on the other side of that. We're seeing Sam get some playing minutes, and I'm fine. Just to be clear, I'm fine with putting Sam in the starting role. I just think it's more than just plug and play with what Klaus is doing right now. You might be able to have the same personnel, same lineup, but you have to ask them to do different things,
Right.
and that's key for me. Santi, I was looking back at the stats from last year for your comparison earlier, and I think it's notable that through the first week of May last year, we allowed the same amount of goals as we've allowed this year. So you were looking at points you had. I was curious about our defensive performance because the focus now obviously is on the attack and making sure that's consistent and producing more goals. 3 goals per game like we were against SKC isn't too much to ask for. We want 2 or 3 goals per game every game. And I was curious about our defensive performance. And sure enough, through the first week of May last year, we had allowed 14 goals in MLS play. Through the first week of May this year, 14 goals in MLS play. I mean, that we're doing what we need to do consistently on our defensive side to be the team we were last year. We need to figure out the attack. So we're coming on 3 months right now before we'd likely have help from the transfer market and be able to bring in a player like Cedric Tukert or someone of his caliber or similar make and model as far as what his performance and what he looks like in tandem with everybody else. But until then, we have who we have. So if you're looking like Daniel Cavera in our live stream chat says, eventually they have to come out and say we don't have very good attacking pieces. I would disagree with that to the extent that you have seen these attacking pieces be successful. We need to get them back to that point. Like Celio Pompeu has taken growth this year versus last year. Is he to the level of maybe a near designated player? No, not he's not there. But if you look at the growth of these players and how they fit in our system, and especially when we're scoring goals, a lot of these players are a part of that. And Indiana Vassilev in particular, I'll look at because this is the one player who has played every single match that St. Louis City has played in MLS. And for that to be the case, you're looking at Bradley Carnell to have the utmost confidence in a player like Indiana Vassilev, who in 2024, unlike 2023, is critical to our attack. He has played every single game in 2024 as an attacking midfield or a forward even. So his role in the attack is unquestioned at this point. It's players around him. And you're bringing in, you could say it's one of those John Mozeliak type scenarios where you're bringing in a player like Rasmus Alm, who was a stop and starter last year, was injured throughout last year, and now you're seeing more time for him. And so we have all these positives that we've taken in the past. We have positives that were occurring before the bye week. And then this bye week happened that kind of took the wind out of our sails. And we were hoping that wouldn't be the case, that we'd be able to continue with the same attacking, threatening that we had against Dallas, Austin, and SKC. But That didn't happen. And so now it's not back to the drawing board, but it's you got to go back to training, have a hard look in the mirror and say, what do we need to do to get back to what we were doing 2 or 3 weeks ago? And because this week is that opportunity, the Chicago Fire. It gets difficult after this when you look at our schedule, but for right now, you have this opportunity. And if you're going to call a game a must win after the series of draws that we've had, to get to the point you mentioned earlier, Santi, of back in the table, in contention, in the middle of the table with 16 points after 11 match games, this is the chance. If you want to prevent that separation that's starting to occur in the Western Conference, where you're having teams like Real Salt Lake and Minnesota United with 21 and 20 points, come down to St. Louis City with 13 right now. Preventing that separation starts next week with Chicago, and you have to take the lessons learned from how our attacking group was performing against Houston, because a lot of it will carry over fairly well. You have to apply that and be successful against Chicago.
Yeah, it's early in the season, but I agree with you. Next week's is a must-win game, especially thinking about what's coming after that, LAFC, and then you have to go to Cincinnati, a hard place to play at, and I'm sure they will want a little bit of revenge from last year with that 5-1 here at City Park. So yeah, definitely against Chicago. Let's just think about Chicago. It's a must-win game. I think. The 3 points are a must next Saturday.
With this 0-0 draw, there are some of those positives that you can take away, mostly on the defensive side. St. Louis does increase their unbeaten streak to 4 consecutive matches. They have 3 shutouts, like we said, in their last 4. And in MLS play, they remain unbeaten against the Houston Dynamo. So this is a team that in MLS play, at least, isn't losing to Houston, which is the story of the season so far. They're not losing. They still only have 1 loss on the season, which is tied for best in MLS. So while we shift to look at what do we need to do with our attack and how we can fit these pieces together, you still have that good foundation to build on, right, Santi?
Absolutely, and yeah, like Real Salt Lake and Minnesota, like they are starting to separate, but then after that, the table is so tight,
Yep.
18 points, 16 points. So yeah, just have to start getting 3 points. But yeah, I'll take the. That's what I wanted to bring the comparison with 2023 after 10 games, because yeah, there are a lot of concerns. Yeah, the team has 7 draws through 10 games, but if you compare in points and if you look at what's going on in the conference with the table, it's not that bad. But now just come back home, get 3 points, and just turn the page.
That's what it needs to be. And we look forward to covering that next week on Flyover Footy. Thank you for joining us so much on Flyover Fallout, looking at the 0-0 draw against Houston. We sure did find enough ways to keep this one entertaining, I hope. Plenty to look into under the hood, and we'll do that again next week as we preview the Chicago Fire. Hopefully with some good news in health coming from training. We hope to see progression from Edu Leuven and Jabulu Blom especially, and continued good news about Josh Yaro and no setbacks. That's the biggest takeaway. We want to see these guys return as quickly as possible because they add significant pieces to our offense, especially with Edu Leuven. We want to see Joachim Nilsson continue to progress and get a start as quickly as possible. But all things considered, the focus is on the attack this coming week, and we want to see more of that. We'll cover it more on next week's Flyover Footy. Santi, thanks for joining me in this look back at the 0-0 draw against the Houston Dynamo. St. Louis moves to 2-1-7, 13 points, 9th in the West. They return home next week to play the Chicago Fire at City Park, who are 13th in the East, sitting with just 10 points and a -8 goal differential. The perfect opportunity in as much of a must-win game, as we said, that you can have. Thanks for joining us, everybody, on Flyover Footy's Fallout, and we will talk to you later.